Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for week 12 of Chris 180's Lunchtime Live Series during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Chandra Luckett, Director of Marketing and Communications, and today we will be discussing a very serious topic that is affecting so many people around us right now, addiction. And while the numbers may be slow coming in, there is a lot of evidence that shows that more people right now are consuming alcohol and drugs in our community just by virtue of the social distancing and the isolation that many people are facing. Today's guests are going to be able to share tips with you on how to move forward and realize signs of addiction in your own lives or in the lives of people you know. So if you have questions, please feel free to comment those below on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll answer those live throughout the rest of this program. I'm excited to introduce today our two panelists. Jessica Donaldson is the director of our Treehouse program that serves young adults dealing with substance use disorders. And Fonta is the director of our iThrive recovery program that works with adults as well. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies, and take over the conversation.
Thank you. So as Chandra said, I'm Jessica Donaldson. I am the project director for the Treehouse program here at Chris 180. We serve ages 13 to 24. It is an intensive outpatient program, and we also offer outpatient services as well. There's groups, there's individual counseling, family counseling, there's peer support services, case management services, so we kind of have a wraparound approach to the services that we offer at Treehouse. And we're located in the Decatur office.
Hello everyone, my name is Fonta and I'm the Director of iThrive Recovery at the new CCCD location off of Claremont. And our program serves those who are struggling with substance use disorders starting at age 18 and older. And our program is a great fit for those individuals that have private insurance. And we're an abstinence-based model. We also have an outpatient program for those who are pursuing what we call harm reduction, who don't necessarily want to stop their use of substances, but want to reduce the harm and the effects that substances are having in their life. And it's also a great program for those who have what we call process addiction. So maybe someone's struggling with gambling, or maybe someone's spending too much, shopping too much, that sort of thing. So that program is called Present Mind Recovery, and that's a great option for those individuals. I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you, Jessica, because I'm new to Chris 180. Jessica and I have been meeting. We said to sit down and talk and have a conversation, so now we're going to have it live.
Yes.
For the first time. So Jessica, what further information do you think would be important for people to know about your program? I know, again, my program is an abstinence-based model, iThrive Recovery, and what approaches do y'all take in your program to help individuals struggling?
So we are a harm reduction program, and we really focus heavily on the impact of trauma and how that also impacts substance use and other self-destructive behaviors. So we're very trauma focused in our therapeutic work in the groups, in individual and family. We're also really heavily focused on working with the families, because the majority of referrals that we do receive are ages 13 to 18. And so we want the family members to be involved and understand what their role is in substance use of their adolescent child.
Absolutely. I think one of the beautiful things, although iThrive Recovery is new to Chris 180, we're very much aligned in that our program is trauma focused as well. And we also come into the work with the understanding that addiction, substance use is a systems problem, it's a family systems problem. So also in our program, we do a lot of family education and helping that individual to understand how the addiction, the substance use is a manifestation of problems outside of themselves, and is certainly not a failure on their part, any type of moral failing on their part. And we do a lot to equip them with skills to be able to manage this disease, because we believe it is a disease. One of the things I know we talked about yesterday when we just had the brief conversation to prepare for Facebook Live today are thoughts that we both have on what's causing the increase in substance use. And I know you shared, you're seeing something different in your program versus what I'm seeing in my program. What are you seeing?
So for us, because it's primarily with teens and alcohol is not typically their drug of choice, there's actually been a reduction in use due to not having access to their plug or their connect. This is the terms they use. And so they've been isolated more in the home, and they've been with the parents, and the parents are home. So there's less opportunities to get out, and a lot of times they would have gotten it at school, and then since they've been doing online, then a lot of that has reduced.
That's really interesting. It makes a lot of sense. And on the other end for us, who we treat primarily adults, so again, it could be 18 and older, but we see a lot of young adults, middle-aged adults. We are seeing an increase in alcohol use, and I really attribute that as I think about the things that clients have shared and what I see happening societally with the pandemic is people are home more. So people are home more because we're sheltering in place. So we're seeing more day drinking. We're seeing a lot of people who are bored, so they're trying to fill that gap. One of the things that I shared, I don't know if you remember in the conversation yesterday, that I personally believe is connected to that is work as escapism. So for many people, they can avoid stressors and problems that they're dealing with outside of work. Work itself can be a stressor by working a lot. But what happens when we're not working as much, or we're working in a very different way, and you do have access as an adult to increase alcohol use, because if there's no other place you're going, most people are going to the store. And what happens when you're not working as much, because then you get confronted with problems and things you hadn't been regularly dealing with. It's like right there in front of you in your face. And what do you do with that? And so many people who are in therapy don't necessarily know what to do with the stuff that's coming up for them. Or maybe there's increased anxiety and a feeling of helplessness because of what they're seeing in society. And alcohol becomes an easy way to cope with those things. I don't know, what are your thoughts about that, even though you're seeing something different in your program?
Definitely. I mean, and I think people now, because of COVID and everybody works from home, people will post pictures online of like, oh, this is the best way to attend a meeting, and they have like a beer or, you know, a glass of wine or something like that. So I think a lot of people are utilizing alcohol to cope with the stressful situation with the pandemic. And I agree with, you know, also if they were using work to cope, and then now their hours have been reduced, then, you know, where does that leave them? And so it's understandable that individuals might use more alcohol during this time.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've seen for a long time in our society that's acceptable is using alcohol as a substance. So many other drugs carry such a high stigma, heavy stigma, but alcohol doesn't. So even though before pandemic, it was like commonly acceptable to go to happy hour and have that has not changed. So people are having virtual happy hours. So they're giving each other and themselves a chance to keep engaging and socializing around alcohol. And there's that societal message that we see a lot of adults, a lot of parents, you know, incorporating and internalizing that we cope by drinking, and that's okay. And it's even seen in things that they may say, like, I just need to relax, I need a glass of wine. But then what does that message that they're actually articulating mean for their kids? How does it impact the family and the children? What they're hearing, what they're learning about how to cope.
Yeah, and we see that quite a bit with the individuals and families that we serve. We end up typically finding out that there is a level of substance use in the home that's been modeled to them by their parents. And so it makes it like, well, you know, my parents do this, so it must be fine. You know, I've always seen them do this. And whether or not, sometimes they have it like managed and under control, sometimes not. But I think that sometimes families aren't aware of what they're modeling to their adolescent children.
And I know even in my work with adolescents, it's not even uncommon to hear stories of kids using with their parents. You know, parents saying, hey, have this beer, and as long as you're doing it in my house, right, that's part of the family culture, or smoking weed with their parents. And again, that's a way in which the message is very explicitly communicated. And that can be really hard when somebody's coming in treatment, right, to work through that, to help them undo that, to shift to a different way of living and being. I know that's been a challenge for me in my work with clients.
Definitely with us as well. And the majority of my clients use marijuana regularly, and they were typically introduced to it by family members. And when we're talking about like why might you want to reduce this use? They oftentimes have difficulty understanding that or thinking about why they would want to reduce, because everyone in the family uses. It's just part of their family culture.
Yeah, and so I mentioned alcohol being one of those societal accepted drugs, but we are seeing marijuana, right, being one of those drugs that's kind of commonplace and being very much accepted as well too, because a lot of myths and misnomers about the impact that marijuana has, myths like you can't get addicted and so on and so forth. I saw we had a question.
Yes, we have two questions. So one comes from Jane on Facebook, and she asks, how do I check in with my friends who may be struggling with addiction or alcohol abuse during this time? It just feels a little awkward to bring it up.
So for me, the first thought is, why do you feel the need to check in with them? What are you seeing that's prompting you to want to do that? Because just because someone's drinking, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's problematic. But if you're saying that, that suggests to me that you see something that's concerning. That's actually one of the things we wanted to talk about. I guess we can move into that, is signs of concerns regarding substance use and addiction. What are those signs that may prompt somebody to want to check in? And then I guess we can talk about a way to do that in a supportive way.
Yeah, so if you notice that, either for yourself, you can do self-assessment, or maybe close friends or other family members. If you notice that they seem to be missing things that they would have typically attended in the past. If there's a lot of thoughts around using, just trying to figure out how often am I thinking about having a drink or smoking, and how much time am I spending dedicating towards drinking or going to the liquor store or going to see your plug and obtaining the marijuana or whatever the substance may be. You want to add more?
Yeah, sure. Another warning sign might be if you tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to drink during the week, I'm only going to drink on this certain day, or I'm only going to drink this certain amount, and you find yourself consistently breaking those rules you set for yourself, drinking when you say you're not going to drink, or using more than you say that you would use, that's another sign that it might be out of control. And if your friends are having those kind of conversations with you and it's prompting some concern, one thing you want to make sure you do is engage them in a way that allows them to feel heard and not judged around their substance use, and be a listening ear. And then if it sounds like they want to do something more besides just talk about it with you and they want some support, definitely connect them with resources. And so a great way to start would be some virtual online meetings. Looks like NA or AA. You can go to the website for AA or NA and find those meetings online. Or certainly you can give us a call here at Chris, because that person could be appropriate for Treehouse, or they could be appropriate for iThrive Recovery, or even our harm reduction outpatient program at CCD, which is Present Mind Recovery. So you can direct them to resources, listen to them, support them, allow them to feel heard. That empathy is incredibly important. There was another question too.
Yes, Grace wants to know, what are some healthy coping mechanisms for people stuck at home whose triggers are in their home?
Oh wow, great question. We were going to go into coping mechanisms. Jessica?
Yeah, sure. So I like to say the opposite of addiction is connection. So being able to connect with others in some type of format is very helpful. I know that a lot of times it's going to be virtually right now, but having some supportive relationships, friendships that you can regularly connect with is a major help with that. I mean, also, making sure that you get outside each day, at least for some time, engage in some type of physical activity, such as walking or maybe yoga or whatever specifically interests you. Some people enjoy dancing, so things like that.
Absolutely. And if those triggers are in the home, I'm not quite sure specifically what that might be, but if it's something environmental, as much as you could potentially make any environmental changes, because you can't actually leave your home and make a move to live somewhere else, then that could be important. So if it's some type of paraphernalia, removing that from the home, changing the way the home looks to create a different vibe, different energy, doing some simple redecorating or painting, or maybe setting limits and boundaries around a certain room that maybe you've typically used in, and not engaging that space as much, or being avoidant of it if you can at all. Those are also some simple ways. So boundary setting you can do within home, and then some simple environmental changes if that's possible.
Yeah, and I would also say for teens, they can't get out of their home environment. And so if their parents are using, then that's often a major trigger for them. Whether or not they're using to excess, maybe they're just having a glass of wine or a beer or something like that. So I think it's important to have the conversations with the family and just ask, like, does this trigger you when I have a glass of wine at night? Or maybe just try to do that, somewhere where they're not in front of their teen. That can be helpful. And I agree with you about like setting boundaries around, okay, this place is okay for me to engage in this, and in other areas of the house, like not to do that.
Yeah, and we're adolescents, those conversations can be so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, I think because parents haven't always known and struggle, like I'm a parent too, right? And so we can go into mommy mode, daddy mode, and go into a place where we're lecturing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last thing you want to do if your kid is struggling with substance use. You want to make sure you're engaging them in a way where your kid can feel comfortable coming to you, talking about their struggle. And so if you're doing that, it makes that conversation easier for your kid then to approach you to say, hey, I'm having this struggle. And for you to understand that maybe what you're doing, although not intentional, is a trigger. So people have various triggers, and seeing mom or dad use can be a trigger. So it's really important for parents not to take that personally, to understand that your kid may be trying to move in a different way and be healthier and make change, and you play a major role in their recovery and how they do that. So just being willing to make those adjustments in your use, to not lecture them regarding what they may come to you with, right? And then make some adjustments in your behavior, not taking this personal, because it's not personal, can go a long ways to supporting your kid, and that's incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Another question.
Yeah, this one is kind of around the societal messaging topic we were speaking about. It says, I'm a mom of 3. Life is stressful these days with kids at home and everything happening in the world. I often drink a glass of wine at night to just calm down. Do I have a problem, or is it harmless?
I mean, I think that you would want to ask yourself, is 1 glass of wine a night okay with me? How do I feel about that? Am I, getting intoxicated? You need to just examine what your values are around it. And because you're really the only one that can decide, like, is it a problem or is it something that's adaptive? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's dead on, and that's really personal. So it's going to vary from person to person. So 1 glass a night or beer may be okay for one person, and another person it may be too much, based off a lot of different factors. And so is it interfering with the way you need to parent and show up for your kids? If there was an emergency that happened in the home, God forbid, a fire or something happened and you had to rush your kid to the hospital, are you still able to drive? Are you still able to think clearly enough to gather everyone up to execute a plan? Or has that 1 glass of wine impaired your ability to respond in that situation? Again, it's going to vary person to person. And just as a test, I often tell clients, just experiment, just see. If you're questioning if it may be too much, why don't you try the experiment of not having a glass of wine every night? See how you feel, see what you notice. Can you honor that? If you're having a hard time, that could be a sign that maybe that 1 glass of wine a night has become a habit that could be problematic for you. Chandra, any more questions?
Yes. So the next one is, have you all seen a spike in the number of people who need assistance at this time in various ways?
We have a steady stream of referrals coming in. So I don't notice a spike in. It's still just been pretty steady ever since we started. But definitely, I think people are, we have seen more concerns that are coming in and saying COVID is making me think about these things more. It's bringing it more to my attention. And so there's definitely like more counseling, I think, opportunities that have come up with this pandemic.
Yeah, I would agree too. I haven't necessarily seen a huge spike, but certainly interest and engagement in people wanting to address their anxiety and their depression because of what's happening with the pandemic, and certainly what's happening in our community right now around race issues and police brutality. And so people find different ways of coping. Not everyone's coping with substance. Addiction's not an issue for everyone. And just because someone's using substances, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have an issue with addiction as well. So we want to make sure that that message is clear. And there's a lot of different things that impede a person's ability to come in for help, and a lot of different reasons in which someone would come in for formalized treatment, such as what we're offering at Chris, versus support. So someone could be having issues with substance, but don't need to necessarily come to Treehouse or iThrive Recovery. They may find recovery through support groups like AA or CODA, Codependency Anonymous, or NA, or other groups in the community. And that can be a way to engage recovery. They don't necessarily always need formalized treatment. So one of the things that we believe here, I think it's pretty safe for me to say throughout Chris 180, and I know we believe in my program at iThrive Recovery, is that there's multiple pathways to recovery, which means it looks a lot of different ways. So it doesn't have to look like you coming into intensive outpatient program. And so for example, for us at iThrive Recovery, intensive means 4 days a week. It's in the evenings, Monday through Thursday, for 3 hours each night, 5 to 8 p.m. That's a huge commitment. And so some people can easily make that commitment. Some people have difficulty making that commitment because maybe they have children. And even though we have a virtual platform, and I believe Treehouse has a virtual platform as well, it can be hard to still manage those responsibilities at home and commit to a program. And that's okay. It doesn't have to look like you coming into a formalized program. It's important that you're doing what works for you and that you're getting better. And we talked about this being a health issue, right? I think this is a great segue into talking about what that looks like and what do we mean by this being a health issue. You want to speak to that, Jessica?
Sure. So, if we look at like what does it take to have a healthy, balanced lifestyle, and it's individualized, just like Fonta said, it's going to be different for everyone. But, does that mean that you have a glass of wine at night? Does it mean that you don't? Does it mean that there's days where you don't, but you do sometimes? I think that you have to kind of ask yourself those questions and see what your values are around that. But making sure, like I said earlier, that you have connection in your life is really important for a healthy, balanced lifestyle as well. And, doing some type of physical activity, doing some type of, focus on your family or whatever your home environment is. Those are all really important to have a balanced, healthy lifestyle. What do you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the piece that you said about family, and I wanted to speak to that too. I think there's a lot of things that are hard right now about living in a pandemic, living in a time where there's such societal unrest right now as we talk about the different social injustices that are happening. But this is certainly a time where people are slowed down to some degree, and in other ways it feels really busy too, but where you can build closer connection, tighter connection with family. And certainly there's challenges there too, to be around your family so much more, because parents right now are also teachers, you're playing all these different roles, especially if you're fortunate enough to still be working and you're working from home, it can be challenging. I think it's important that we capitalize on this time to build tighter connections within the family unit as you talk about building connection. Because we at iThrive Recovery, and I think throughout Chris, also believe the same, that the opposite of addiction is connection. So how can you build a tighter connection, partner to partner, or mother to child, or husband to child, or grandfather to grandchild, whoever's living in that home together? That's really important. And as you build tighter connections, whether it's within the family unit or outside in the community with people and you engage with friends, I think people naturally find that that connection and relationship that they thought they needed with the substance doesn't have to be there. So for so many people, that relationship that they have with the substance that became toxic, it was filling a void. And as we can fill that place in our life and inside of ourselves with connections with people we love, with things, with faith, whatever it is, you can find that that void is filled up. Our tank is filled up. we don't necessarily feel as empty or feel the need for the things that were once so toxic. And it can bring joy and passion and just revitalize us in ways that we didn't even know we could be revitalized. And that healthy connection and that new sense of vitality can continue outside of the pandemic. So this is a time where you can carry forward healthy habits if you capitalize on this time. And we recognize it's not easy to confront these issues that you're being faced with. It's not easy for us, right?
Right.
As clinicians as well. But as much as we can lean into this, I think it's incredibly important for us as individuals, as families, as societies, as communities.
Yes, I agree.
So we have a
One
question.
more question.
Yes, and this one is from a parent. It says, my teen is going into high school. What can I tell him about drinking or drugs before parties become the norm?
Well, I mean, I would just recommend doing basic kind of like have a conversation, you know, ask him like, what does he know or what does he think about alcohol or drugs? Does he, you know, think that he might want to go to these parties and participate in these things? I think it's really important to truly listen and like what Fonta was saying earlier, if you start going into lecturing mode, then they just like shut off completely. So just asking them, okay, well, what is important to you, you know, with drinking or using drugs? Like, you know, try to figure out how does your teen view it and how, you know, once you get that information, then you can talk more about like, okay, so here's how to be safe when you go to a party or if you're drinking.
And I think the messaging, we talked a little bit about that, is really critical. And belief systems. So sometimes we find, I think oftentimes we find, whether it's adults or kids are doing a thing because they believe, for example, everyone else is doing it. Or that's supposed to be what you do, right? It's a rite of passage, right? To get drunk at age 21 or go to a party and drink and experiment with drugs. So I think it's important for parents to have that conversation with kids, giving them permission to choose something else, to think something else, to have their own individualistic beliefs that don't have to be in line with greater society or with their peers, and to help them see examples of other people who aren't doing the thing that they feel like they're supposed to do, right? To see examples of people living differently and choosing differently to create a different message. Because you do have options. Not everyone is doing it, but it's easy to feel that internal pressure, that peer pressure you talk about is not necessarily always external. Sometimes the pressure is often, I think more than anything, coming from within. And then again, if you can create a different belief system, you can steer yourself differently. So I think that's really critical.
Ladies, any closing comments for people who may not know if they have a problem or watching this for the first time and maybe thinking something in their heads?
Well, I thank you guys for watching, and if you do have those questions, I think it would be helpful to kind of just assess for yourself and figure out like how much am I using? Why am I feeling like I may or may not have a problem? That's kind of a question that would come up, because if you don't have concerns about your use, then you might not be asking that question to yourself. So just kind of see, how often are you using? How much are you thinking about it? If you want, set a goal, like, okay, instead of drinking every night, I'll just drink like 3 days this week, or, you know, whatever it is that's achievable for you, and then see how that goes.
Absolutely, I also echo that. And then if you are uncertain after you've done that, it doesn't hurt to reach out to a professional and you can get an assessment. So we here at Chris 180 would love to provide that kind of professional support. And then we'll give a clinical recommendation. We'll give you feedback essentially regarding if we do see there's a problem, and then you get to choose from there. Again, we're very person-centered. And so you can reach us at 404-636-1457 if you want to schedule that assessment, and then you can choose next steps.
So I want to say thank you so much to Jessica and Fonta for being here and for sharing their professional opinions, expertise, and knowledge. Like I said, if you feel like you have an issue or you want to talk to someone, Chris 180, we are here to help. We have counseling centers located throughout Metro Atlanta that can address any issues you or your family are going through at this time. And we know this is a sensitive time and a really difficult time in our country, dealing with a pandemic and racial unrest. We're going to be addressing those issues coming up in the next few weeks here on our Lunchtime Live series. So make sure you come back next week and participate in that conversation with us. We want you all to know that we're here to support you as we have been for the past 40 years. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please leave them for us below. We would love to take your feedback on ways we can be a better resource to our communities. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.